often can happen to people who have sustained some injury to their spine is that they can experience a Kundalini awakening. I knew that I couldn't return, even if I wanted to that way of life. Everything was teaching me about the outside world, but nothing was teaching me about the inner self.
Welcome to Awaken Human, where we rebirth sovereignty into your true self, bridging together mind, body, and spirit as we experience Earth as a soul in the human body, sharing channeled messages from ascended masters and our awakening journeys, including my own. I'm your host, Maeve. Let the journey continue. This interview with Jasmin is going to be divided into two parts. This first part, we talk all about awakening to the divine wisdom within. Next week, we're going to be going into Glastonbury, Avalon, initiations, and the inner sacred union. So stay tuned for that one. But for now, we will be going into this juicy topic of awakening our inner wisdom.
Hello, hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Awakened Human. Today I have with me Jasmin Magdalene Rose, this beautiful, beautiful soul that I met in Glastonbury. I can't wait to share all of her beauty that she just magnifies with all of you. Jasmin has experienced a profound awakening halfway through university studies when she was hit by a car as a pedestrian. And since then, she's been exploring a Kundalini awakening, visiting lots of sacred sites around the world as a guide. And as part of her ongoing journey, she is reconnected to her lineage of the Black Madonna through Mary Magdalene, Isis, and the beautiful Mother Mary. She's reconnected to her Celtic, starseed, and Avalon lineages, and all of which she infuses into her unique way as a grid worker, and a channel and guide for awakened and those of you who are also awakening souls. And she assists and supports all of these people to heal and come home to themselves. So without further ado, I can't wait to dive into everything that she has to share with us today. So first and foremost, I'd love for you to share what is the top thing that you are navigating and integrating right now as an awakened human yourself.
Okay, thank you, Maeve. First of all, I do want to say thank you for having me here. It's such an honor. And I'm so delighted to be here and to be able to share through this medium and to connect with you in this way. And to all the listeners out there, thank you also. So, the biggest thing I'm navigating at this moment, that would be expanding into deeper levels of trusting the unknown and expanding self-mastery and boundaries when it comes to service work and navigating the areas in which we are meant to be working and realizing in some areas it's okay to say, I don't have the answers, I don't know, and that's okay. That even as guides, teachers, healers, we simply can't know it all. And it's wise to be able to have the capacity to acknowledge that at times and to, for example, refer someone on to somebody else who might need a specialist form of care, for example.
Yeah, my heart's swelling as you say that. I feel like there's this pressure or expectation that when you access these certain guides or you have these certain remembrances that some people put you on a pedestal while you're
Mm,
also in your humanness, and
mm,
there's a certain level of wisdom that you're integrating and embodying too.
mm.
And I'm curious if you can share a little bit more too when you said trusting the unknown.
Yeah, trusting the unknown. It's a reminder to connect within, to connect, keep your connection to your soul, what brings you joy, what excites you, and trusting the universe to always provide for you when you follow the calling of your soul. And just a reminder to stay in present moment and take one step at a time. And sometimes knowing that will only be shown the steps after that once we take those first few steps. So trusting the unknown in that sense. It's trusting, following that inner guidance from a place of being here now, present now, and just seeing what are the opportunities, the choices presenting themselves right now, and following on what feels most aligned with you in this now, and trusting that will get you to the next step. And the next step will then be revealed. I've had so many experiences of kind of needing to trust the unknown. And looking back, I wish that I had more trust in, and just had more faith and trust in what was to come. And because I've always been so incredibly cared for by the universe, by the divine source, whenever I've really followed my soul's calling to, say, book a one-way ticket to India or go to Egypt, but I didn't want to, but I was really called to go, and everything was like, all I had to do was like show up, and the rest kind of was all prepared, all set up in some pre-birth or soul agreement with, other souls that presented at the time.
Yeah, we have no idea sometimes why we're getting a nudge to go do something. And then it
Absolutely.
turns out to be the most magical
Absolutely.
experience I could ever
Absolutely.
have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We really do live in a universe that wants to support us. And all we need to do is just have that faith and just keep going, just keep connecting and looking at those false beliefs and those doubts that we might have, and just working through them. Just keep going on, keep doing the inner work, to have more trust, have more faith, and connect, even to raise our vibration, to get into even deeper levels of our inner guidance and inner wisdom that wants to come through our higher self. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, I feel like sometimes we're also responding when we go to these places, we're responding to the quantum field. Like, and the field
Yeah.
is speaking to us, but we,
Mm,
with our human mind, can't understand what it's
absolutely.
calling us for. And then we get there, we're like, wow, this is
Absolutely.
so much more.
So it really asks us to kind of trust the non-linear, trust the, which is more the feminine side, like the unknown is the void, is like trusting the feminine, which is the mystery. And instead of, following logical facts, which is more the masculine, trusting the non-linear, which is the quantum field, which is trusting that sometimes we're taken on a spiral journey, or sometimes pieces of the puzzle, will come into place, but not in the order, not in any prescribed order that we might expect or anticipate.
Yeah, the feminine
That makes sense.
requires that feeling of the energy.
Absolutely. And that connecting to the energy of things, the energy of places, the energy of, what's beyond words, is also the realm of the divine feminine, whereas the masculine is more about the words, the teachings, the structures, the containers, and or the history of place, a sacred site. whereas it's the energy that you feel that's about the divine feminine.
Yeah, it's like it allows you to execute the discipline of that flow or the will of it when you're in that energy.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share, like, kind of go back to before we dive into all of about the divine masculine, divine feminine, because I would love to tap into this more. You mentioned, throughout your journey being called to like Egypt or India. Your journey started with a very traumatic awakening. If you could share some of the highlights of your awakening journey.
It's a long story, but I'm still trying to just focus on the highlights. So I was a straight A, all-round high achiever academic at university when in my second year of a science degree, when I was struck by a car, and literally overnight, I lost consciousness briefly, but literally I woke up in hospital feeling like a very different person. And I know that I had a fractured pelvis and also a left brain hemorrhage. Now, what often can happen to people who have sustained some injury to their spine or their pelvic floor in some kind of car accident is that they can experience a Kundalini awakening. Now, I had no idea about this at the time because I wasn't in any way spiritual. I was a very logical, linear, academic, intellectual, didn't have time or interest in anything beyond that. I was very into the facts and just in my masculine, my left brain. Then it was like my left brain had been temporarily shut down and my right brain had to take over, which is more the intuitive, spiritual, creative side. So I had two things happen at the same time. I had this Kundalini awakening and this left brain hemorrhage. And some say what can happen or what that kind of indicates is like a walk-in. And I can definitely say, because what it felt like was like a higher aspect of myself had kind of walked in, taken over, and started questioning all my choices up until that point. And very quickly and clearly had a lot of clarity and just could see that this is not what life is about. There's much more beyond this. And none of this is actually worth pursuing. And looking at the deeper reasons as to why I followed this particular path up until now. And I could easily see it was that's, where I got all my recognition from, and that's where I could place my ego, and that was my identity. And, I had friends and family that were very proud of me for being this all-around high achiever.
It was your way to belong or connect in the family, too.
Indeed. And suddenly all that was stripped away. I had to kind of, there was one side that was dealing with the death of an identity. I realized I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what life was truly about. I didn't know why I was here. None of all this education actually taught me about the most important thing, which is our consciousness, why we're here, our body, mind, spirit, soul. What about this? Everything was teaching me about the outside world, but nothing was directing me or teaching me about my inner world or the inner self. And I realized I can't, that's the most important thing,
It's that moment dismantled.
Indeed.
This accident dismantled everything that you were thinking was the purpose of life, of Earth, of being here.
Indeed. It became very clear that to me, that way of life just felt very empty and lacking in substance that I was now really on a quest to kind of find. And so that kind of put me on a spiritual quest. I was recommended to start yoga, and I was, daily going to a yoga studio, and I ended up becoming a teacher there. And a lot of the people that were teaching there actually, or, the students there would regularly go to India. And it kind of put me in connection with certain past lives I feel I've had in India as a yogini. one of the teachers would read a small passage out of Autobiography of a Yogi at the end of each class, just as something to contemplate, as we go home or just after meditation or before meditation. And it gave me a lot of food for thought and inspired me to go on a quest for a teacher. I wanted to go as close as I could to source, So I didn't want to learn anything from a teacher who had sat with a guru. I wanted to find the guru, because that at that point was for me the understanding of the closest you can get to source was through, the Indian tradition of a guru. So I went on that quest and, bought myself a one-way ticket to India, was actually blessed with a very generous compensation from the accident. Finished my university studies, did actually manage to complete my university studies, and then sold all my belongings and went on a one-way ticket to India, knowing that I just had to. It was just like destiny calling, It's like I just knew there was more to life than what I'd known in Australia, and something more was calling me, and I had to go and meet it.
You followed the nudge.
Indeed. And I was 25 when I left Australia for India. And I remember I first went to Sai Baba's ashram in Puttaparthi. And outside the ashram, I was sitting at a cafe one day, and some Indian guy came into the cafe, and he was walking around, and he came to my table, and he said, "I'm an astrologer. If you give me your birth date, I can tell you about your life." And I thought I wasn't really interested, but, I just gave him my birth date, and he said to me, "You will follow the path of the serpent until the age of 27. Up until between now and the age of 27, you're going to keep traveling, visiting different sacred sites, and not settling anywhere until the age of 27, and then you'll be on a yogic path." And I thought to myself, whatever, I'm not interested in this. Okay. And he said, if you want to find out, yeah, if you find out more, if you want to find out more, contact me. I never did, and I really didn't pay any attention. I didn't really think back on it until like a few years ago, when I started to after the age of 27, when I realized I had, in between those 2 years, traveled 2 different sacred sites around the world, and then ended up in a yoga community at some point. And I settled in as part of this community for about 7 years before leaving it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that was the first part.
Okay. Yeah. So this was like you had like the pre-chapter almost.
Yeah.
that set up the rest
Indeed.
of your journey.
Indeed. Then I joined this yoga community and had this experience of, having a guru. And at a certain point, I realized that I had all this wisdom coming from inside me and this deep inner knowing as to what was right for me and what was aligned, and that it didn't always match what the guru was saying. And then I realized that actually, the true guru, and any true guru, will teach you or will indicate to you that, the true guru is within, the true teacher is within, and will redirect you to your own inner wisdom and guidance. And I felt almost that I outgrew that phase of my evolution, or perhaps it was just something from a past life that I needed to finish. This idea of needing to give our power away to an outer source as our divine authority. Because although at the start it did fulfill a purpose, and eventually that purpose was to follow my own guidance and leave that community rather than follow the programming of, handing over your power and just doing as you're told, which for me,
It was to remember the seeds within you.
Indeed.
Remembering, yeah, and helping you. It was like the spark of there's this within me in another way.
Indeed, indeed. And realizing that I can trust. So in a way, it did serve the purpose of making me realize that I actually don't need an outer guru. No, and it was in the sense of, putting someone on a pedestal, giving all your power away to them, as many, many, many people still do, have this need to have someone telling them what to do. And the most
There's that lack of trust in the own self.
Indeed, and disconnection from our inner self, our higher self, or our deep inner knowing and guidance. A lot of people are disconnected. If we look at the way that we've been raised in the mainstream collective, it's very disconnected. It's like so many of us. The inner child in the human or in the adult is really the inner ego, whereas the higher self is the adult, is the inner parent. And so many of us, even as adults, we have an unintegrated inner child, or we're still looking for some parent in the form of either the media, the government, gurus, cult leaders, because we're still an early stage of maturity as a collective of humanity, in terms of our consciousness. Still a lot to get through. I think we're, overall, I think still in adolescence,
Yeah, it's when we've been in this collective unconscious of and this way of being within having these one-off kind of enlightened people, and what it feels like is happening right now is we're all slowly figuring out that each of us have that ability. And so as we're shedding these layers, each one of us, it's almost like it feels like eventually it's a collective enlightenment, not this one-off guru anymore.
Definitely. I think we're also living in very different times where the frequency on Earth is higher than what served at a particular time on Earth doesn't serve anymore. Just like a certain phase, just as we're shifting, the Earth is shifting, and the frequency of the Earth is shifting, and therefore things that may have served or assisted humanity at a certain phase doesn't serve anymore because we're living with less density, and we have so many more resources at our fingertips if we really want them. And if we really want to do the inner work and to raise our vibration, we have so many more tools and resources. If we really seek, we will find. Those. Sometimes we might have to go through some loops or labyrinths on the way, but these things also always serve a purpose. It's just to gain experience, to clear karma, or to gain experience, even through clearing karma, that we may then make use of later down the line as we're perhaps stepping into our service work.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the unknown too, and because you don't know exactly, especially when it's a painful moment and you're in the depth of the intensity of it, that it feels like something's happening to you rather than for you.
Yes.
And we're really, when we come out on the other side of it and we can see that karmic lesson and that our soul's growth, then we experience this beautiful rose or flower that's opening within us. And
absolutely.
And the moment does not feel like that, though.
Yeah. Sure, it can be sometimes it can be very scary, the dark night of the soul or the void.
Yeah, so what happened once you realized it's time to be your own guru?
Well, I don't, I wouldn't say my own guru. It's, kind of a term that I resonate with, but, I know what you mean. I realized that, standing firm in my own truth and my heart's deep inner knowing of what was true and what was right presented a challenge to the community, particularly to the yoga and those in authority that kind of want everyone to just, do as they're told, basically. And I experienced my own form of the Magdalene wound through this experience, because I was completely ostracized and excluded from the community and told that, there could be no further contact with anyone in the community, even on a personal level, because I was no longer part of the community. And then I realized this is more of a cult rather than a true community. So that was very much an eye-opener as well, just realizing, that but it happens to so many people, and to be honest, it came about because in this community, I had met someone with whom I had a very strong soul connection, and we had a very powerful soul recognition with each other, and felt like someone from, I used to think it was a twin flame type of connection, very powerful Kundalini activation between us. In fact, my kriyas, sometimes, I'll have like Kundalini kriyas, they started when we connected, and he had them as well. However, the yoga community were very adamant that we had to stay apart because there was a risk of us maybe forming a union. And they were very much threatened by this union because it, quite obviously could have been a powerful union that would have threatened the position of authority of the guru and the whole hierarchy. So I very much experienced the Magdalene in that I was outcast and called all types of things you can imagine. But I didn't know anything about this connection with Mary Magdalene at the time. I just experienced this, and it was again another ego death and loss of identity, and just feeling this, it was a family. It had been a family for 7 years. It had been a family in a community. We'd chant every night together. We'd spend Christmas together. We'd celebrate birthdays together. It was like very intense sort of community. Living together a lot, creating together. So that was like again another ego death and a void. But I knew that I had to stay true to what I was feeling in my heart, because I could really feel this discrepancy between what I then started to perceive as corruption as opposed to what I knew in my heart was true and right. And but again, it was quite daunting because I had been in a foreign, I ended up being in a foreign country where I was now in a void space and questioning where to from here, and feeling very isolated in my experience, not knowing how do you integrate all this into the normal world, So, and it took me a while. It took me it was a very intense experience. And it wasn't until I connected with Priestess online. She'd reached out to me on Instagram, or she just started following me on Instagram, and I resonated with her offerings, and I decided to sign up. She was offering a priestess training, and I thought, I feel really called to connect with this training for some reason. And as part of that priestess training, she shared the story of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, and how Mary Magdalene had been ostracized, and how Mary Magdalene had been outcast and called all kinds of things, and her voice had been, repressed, and all traces of her kind of erased as much as possible, and her role and her purpose very much diminished. And that somehow struck a deep chord of resonance with me, as though what I'd experienced is almost like an archetypal experience that that many of us on a path of the divine feminine, or that hold that frequency of the divine feminine, those codes of the divine feminine, may have experienced either in this life or in other lifetimes in some form or another.
It feels like you contributed to the collective wound, and like I see like this like pathway opening by that action that you took. It's rippling into humanity's timeline, and you are helping to reshape the surfacing of that wound.
Possibly. You know, there's have you heard of Tom Kenyon? He's written a book, I think it's called The Magdalene Manuscript. And I think it is in this book that it's co-written with someone else. I think a woman, Judy, I don't recall her name.
It's not coming to me. Judith, maybe? Judy or Judith? I can't remember the last name.
I don't remember either. She's actually, in that book, she's actually written a chapter of her own Magdalene experience. And she too shares how she feels it's like an archetypal experience that many women experience. So, yeah, we're but as the divine feminine, we are rising and we're coming into our power. So we're healing these wounds, we're transmuting these experiences, we're surviving them, and we're transmuting them. And
Go
ahead. And we're stepping into a higher level of service work through this healed and transmuted experience,
Yeah, it's very fascinating. It runs so deep. I just had this experience in a reading that I just had, that I had a past life where I was a healer, and I had been actually attacked by, or I guess infiltrated in my field by two entities that were having a hard time passing, and they ended up attaching to me in this life. And the priest had outcasted, or they did a healing on me, and in that I was outcasted by the town and had been accused of being the false light. And so I was very lonely, and that was creeping into this light.
Oh, okay.
And just now cleared that timeline, that life, where especially women, they're being downplayed by the church or whatever different type of form, where we were told that this is pure source information, and now we are not only the feminine, the actual female body, but reclaiming that divine feminine, not this wisdom from what we say is the divine masculine.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it is. Yeah, that runs deep. It's this is a shift in the collective. We're clearing these timelines, we're clearing these karmic timelines, and a lot of that also has to do with forgiveness. Forgiving and releasing. Forgiving, as they say, forgive them, they know not what they do. And we forgive not for them, but so that we can go higher.
Yeah, recognizing the programming that's run deep and been passed on through these states of consciousness that
indeed
we've been in.
Yes, and also looking at the gifts of empowerment that have been in these experiences. So, shifting out of the victim persecutor consciousness, which is the 3D, And seeing that as a soul, all of these experiences have been soul contracts to come in to wake us up into greater levels of empowerment and self-mastery, even though at the time it might not feel like it,
To really know yourself.
Yeah. And to love yourself, and to also forgive those aspects of ourselves that co-created those experiences, on a soul level, perhaps from past lives and other karmic or soul agreements that we may have had, to play out certain roles, to experience certain roles, and yet to know ourselves as love through all these experiences and through all these roles ultimately.
What helps you in those moments where there's where you're in something and coming to that deeper understanding of and out of the victim?
Okay, coming out of the victim. Well, I know always connecting within, coming back into my heart, connecting with my higher self, and feeling this love that my higher self, the divine source, has for me. The beings of light have for us. Feeling this love, just reconnecting back with the love. And I think what also really helps is to have people who truly see you and hear you and know you and understand you in your life. But we don't always have that. And I didn't have that when I was coming out of this phase of being part of the community and experiencing a lot of projection and loneliness and isolation. But now we've got the internet, and there are so many resources and communities that you can find online, and groups that you can find online. Although that's not the answer either, because we need that human connection, but it's a starting point, connecting with your higher self, connecting with teachings, wisdom, beings, people, places, things that nourish you, that lift your energy, just raising your frequency, taking care of yourself, loving yourself, being and also speaking to ourselves, speaking out loud. I've got you through this. I love you, and just connect. It's really it's not just one thing. It's many different things. Having faith, keeping that vision, focusing, bringing your energy and your attention back to you and where you want to go, what you would like to experience in life, what you'd like to co-create or create. So bringing the focus back to you rather than being concerned what other people are thinking or saying or doing, just bringing it back to you and connecting with just connecting with that unity grid of light workers, of fellow souls, knowing that somewhere in the world there are people who love you and who get you and who are on your frequency and who are just waiting to come into your life, and focus, calling in what you want to call in. So just shifting our focus and keeping the focus on raising our, shifting our vibration from victim, feeling sorry for ourselves, to I created this, and what can I learn from this? What are the gifts from this?
So it's taking ownership of our co-creatorship
Yes.
in this human experience, and also receiving divine support, the unseen support from higher self or your guides, but also in the community who's going to be able to maybe help you hold to sometimes that higher perspective,
absolutely,
that wisdom. Yeah,
absolutely. Someone that I drew a lot of healing and inspiration from during that phase was actually Eckhart Tolle. I would listen to a lot of his podcasts or recordings, and he would speak a lot about just being the witness consciousness, just witnessing rather than identifying, and just the importance of connecting with your deep I, or, going within, connecting, the deep I is another term for the higher self, really. Witnessing the ego death and just witnessing the mind and the thoughts, but not identifying with them. And the more conscious we are, the more choices we have available to us. And I always find when we put some effort into, or take a few steps, toward wanting to connect more to our higher selves, or to raise our vibration, to become more conscious in some area of our life, divine source, or, light, or our own, higher self, whatever term you have for it, also, take 10 steps toward us. If we take a few steps toward it, it will take 10 steps toward us, then I just find the universe supports us. The universe is really supportive of those who want to raise in consciousness, or who want to follow the calling of their soul. And it's not that, but we're all such individual journeys as well, though, and it can be really challenging. We can get caught up in loops and things like that. We need to be really careful with like spiritual bypassing. Like a lot of people think that, ascension is all about going upwards, leaving our bodies, hanging out with the higher beings of light and being spiritual, but it's really not grounded. It's not centered. It's very disassociated, or there's a lot of denial, And as they say, denial is not just a river in Africa.
No, it does not. Yeah, it's really about bringing that harmony of balance, of the oneness, and because there is both sides, and we're in
Absolutely.
a duality right now, and there's a contrast that we get to learn from, but it's bringing that harmony back into balance of this lower self, what we deem the lower self, or
the human ego self. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and using it as a tool and a guidance, not something to deny or shut down, or pretend it's not there, because otherwise it eventually will get really, really loud. And
absolutely,
it's like a kid that wants attention from their parent.
Exactly.
Back to that inner child, or
or like we see in some places around the world where there are sacred sites. Attracts a lot of people that are quite lost, or disembodied, or disassociated, and a lot of traumatized individuals kind of just hanging or looping, in karmic patterns, and getting involved in addictions, and or just really quite lost,
Yeah, I'd imagine being in Glastonbury that you see quite a bit of mixture of both.
Absolutely. And Glastonbury has that duality very strongly. It has that light and that shadow, but it's also being aware of, it's also about embracing our own inner shadow, our own inner woundedness, and loving those parts of ourselves, integrating those parts, tending to those parts, rather than projecting them out onto others. People can have such unique experiences in Glastonbury, but it very much is an amplifier of all that we hold within. But what one person may hold within can be very different to another person, and so their experiences will be very different. Their realities will be very different. So you might not come across any of that at all, or you might come across a lot of strange things happening, and experience. A lot of people here do experience another dark night of the soul at some point. It's or a lot of initiations and tests, and
I think I had like 5 initiations. Well,
really,
oh yes.
would you like to share about any of them? I'd be interested to hear.
All right, beautiful souls, that concludes the first part of this interview with Jasmin. Get ready for next week, where we go into Glastonbury. I share some of my own initiations and really just the beauty that this sacred site holds. I can't wait for you all to hear. But until next time, sending you all so much love. Thank you for tuning in to Awaken Human. I hope this empowered you on your spiritual awakening and knowing thyself. The key to awakening lies within each of us, and by embracing our authentic selves, we create a brighter, more compassionate world. If you like this episode, share your story and tag me. Don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and leave a review or comment. Until next time, may you continue to awaken to the infinite possibilities within.